Hey guys, it's Cerise, so welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my November wrap-up, which is going to be a quick affair. At least, I always say this even when I have few books to show and then I end up talking for way too long, so we'll see. But I only ended up reading 4 books in the month of November. If you've been watching my update video that I did a few weeks ago, you will know that I was in a huge reading slump throughout October and the first half or so of November, so I only ever really read throughout the last few weeks, and that's why I only got through 4 books. It's still a good amount considering I barely was reading, but still, it's not that much, so let's just jump straight into it. Just in case you're wondering why I'm not doing stats, I'm thinking of like scrapping that for now. I might do a stat video at the end of the year for the whole year, but I don't want to do monthly ones anymore. I don't think people enjoy it that much, to be honest, and yeah, let me know if you miss it or if you're happy it's gone. That would be great. Leave a comment down below. But anyway, let's jump straight into the reviews for today. So my least favorite book in November was a DNF actually, and that is The Song Rising by Samantha Shannon. This is book 3 in the Bone Season series, and you guys know I've been struggling. I tried and failed to read this book so many times now, and this month I finally called it quits, called time of death on it. I'm not gonna end up reading this ever. I think this time I got to page 115 or so, and I just found that I didn't care at all. This series, if you didn't know, is set in the year 2059 or so, and it follows clairvoyants living in London that are being basically persecuted and, you know, hunted by an alien race. It's kind of messy, but I really enjoyed the first book when I read it like 50,000 years ago. I just don't care anymore. I don't care about the story. I don't care about the main character. I think she's so boring. And the story is also very predictable. Paige really is very kind of exhausting to read about at times because the author is trying to do like this balancing act between having her be like this kick-ass leader, which she isn't actually. She's not suited to leading at all, but also be like really compassionate and caring and not able to like dole out punishment to people that like oppose her, and I just can't. I just can't read this right now. Like, I hate when authors can't decide what direction to take their character in, so they just like make a muddle of it in the middle somewhere that's not really clear cut and doesn't really make sense. So yeah, I just don't care anymore. That's like really the baseline for this. I don't care. I didn't give it a rating because I just don't care. I don't think it's necessarily a bad book or that Samantha Shannon is necessarily a bad writer. I just don't want to anymore. Then I have 2 3-star books. The first is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I was really excited to read this book, and honestly, for the first little bit, I really enjoyed it, but at the end of the day, it didn't quite hit the mark for me. This book follows 2 teenagers, Connell and Marianne. They live in Ireland, and Connell is quite poor, but he's very popular at school. He has like a ton of friends. He's very quiet and reserved, but people kind of, you know, just because they've known him forever, they're his friends, so this kind of friendship comes really easily to him. And Marianne comes from a very rich family, but a family who's also been sort of abusing her, abusing her for a long period of time. And she's kind of a loner and weird and like doesn't, you know, change herself to be accepted by others, and so she's not accepted by others, basically. And Connell's mother works as a cleaner in Marianne's house, so Connell and Marianne sometimes meet outside of school, and they start up a friendship that becomes a sort of relationship that they keep secret from everyone because Connell's kind of ashamed of admitting to liking her because she's so weird, or thought to be by everyone else. And then basically the relationship is just shown throughout high school as well as college. It jumps a lot in the timeline, so there's always going to be like these jumps of like 5 months later, 2 years later, 3 months later. And honestly, it's quite jarring. It really takes you out of the story, and also it makes it kind of difficult to believe sometimes that these 2 people who claim to care and, you know, love each other so much can like change at the flick of a switch in the space of 5 months, because you're also not really seeing this development, right? You're basically just seeing the change that happened, but not like the overtime change as it occurred. So it's sometimes a little bit difficult to understand. What I found the most frustrating though is that they're both so childish and naive and uncommunicative. It's honestly frustrating. when they were children in high school, I understood, like, obviously teenagers are very bad at communicating their emotions. What else is new? Like, we know, we've been new that is a thing, and I completely get that. But they end up going to college, and they end up like sort of growing up in other areas, but they seem to still not be able to figure this very basic stuff out of like, this is how you share your feelings. You don't immediately jump to misinterpretations that are very apparently wrong, like, and construed, right? Like, it's just so frustrating how they never change in that regard. They never grow up. They never evolve in any way. And the ending is super frustrating as well, because again, nothing changed. They keep being this in the same, like, will they, won't they, on-off relationship, claiming that they have this serious, strong connection on an almost spiritual level, but at the same time, failing to communicate the most basic aspects of their personality or their family lives to each other. There's also a part in this where the abuse that Marianne has experienced at the hand of her families becomes apparent to Connell, and he literally does nothing about it. He doesn't advise her to go seek therapy. He doesn't help her in any way. He doesn't offer, to like let her come home with him over Christmas or something so she doesn't have to go back to her family. Like, he does absolutely nothing. He's basically just like, oh, I guess you're damaged now. That's your thing to deal with, and I don't want to intrude. And I think that the author was trying to send the message that, like, other people can't solve your problems or, like, can't heal you, and, like, this idea that, like, love doesn't heal your mental illness and your problems, which is very much true, but somebody who claims to love you should help you in all those areas. They should be there. They should, stick up for you, fight with you when it's difficult for you to do, right? They're supposed to be there and not just be like, oh, I guess this doesn't concern me, so you do you. Like, it's honestly really frustrating. So I ended up giving this 3 stars because I really enjoyed reading it, and I think the writing style is very lyrical. And it really reminded me of The Idiot by Elif Batuman, which was one of my favorite books from last year, because it's kind of like stream of consciousness, really like in the middle of these characters' thoughts, and as a story it's just very, very focused on how these 2 characters feel and like them in the moment. There's not a lot of noise from other characters, which I personally really love. But since it is so focused on them, when they don't change and when they don't improve and when they don't communicate with each other, it just really detracts from the overall enjoyment of the book. At least it did for me. So 3 stars it is. My second 3-star is Sylvester by Shortshed Hair. This is my, I think, 4th or 5th Shortshed Hair book, and so far my least favorite. I don't think I've given any of her other books under 4 stars so far, but this just didn't quite cut it for me. In this book we follow a duke named Sylvester who is in search of a bride, and as all the dukes and heroes of Shortshed Hair books, they're basically disillusioned with the typical girls in society. Like, they think they're all boring and like the same, basically the same personality all over and over again. He then sort of jokingly says that he might start wooing this girl called Phoebe, who is, I think, somehow like a distant relative to him or something like that. And when Phoebe hears this, she is very much not happy with this because she's met him once before when he didn't recognize her, and she felt that he was really unlikable and kind of an idiot. And so she wrote a story where she like included him in the story as a caricature kind of thing, as like the villain basically. And so she flees from him when he visits, but then, the usual thing, like they come together, overcome issues, and then, eventually fall in love after all. But this time, I just didn't feel the magic quite as much. Especially the beginning, like 100, 200 pages, I felt dragged a lot because there wasn't really much plot, which is okay in a romance, but there also wasn't much movement within the romance. Like, it just was stagnation all around kind of, and it was really boring. Also, the plot kind of flip-flopped around a lot. All of a sudden there's like this kidnapping plot that occurs, and like, yeah, I don't know, I just wasn't on board. I never had that satisfying moment of like the characters admitting their feelings for each other. I never really felt as connected to the characters as I did in Georgette Heyer's other books. And overall, I just like didn't really feel it. And finally, my 4-star book of the month is The Diviners by Liva Bray. Yes, I finally caved and picked this up. It has been on my shelf for actual years and I never picked it up because it's kind of dauntingly long and I just wasn't feeling it, but all of a sudden I was, and I started reading it and I really, really enjoyed it. This book, if you didn't know, is set in the 1920s in New York, and it follows a group of teenagers who all discover that they have powers, some form of powers. Like, for example, our main character Evie can touch objects of other people and read them, so like find out things about the history of the person who owns it. Another character can basically cause people not to see him, another character can heal people, another character can set things on fire. There's a whole different host of skills that these so-called diviners have, and there's kind of a reason why all of this is happening, you know, right now, all of a sudden. There's in general a huge influx in paranormal occurrences, ghost reportings, hauntings, and all of that kind of stuff. And this same thing is also enhancing the powers of the diviners. At this point, I've also already read the sequel, The Layer of Dreams, and as far as I can tell, all of these books have like specific mysteries that are being solved within one book, but then there's also overarching mysteries that include like a government department for paranormal, or like the, you know, leader of all the supernatural stuff, like the reason why all this is happening and stuff like that. So there's like a few mysteries that span all these characters that are all involved in some way, and we don't know how they came to be. We don't know how all this is connected, and honestly, it's really, really fun. I don't think all unlikable characters are created equal. I was gonna say evil. Equal. And for example, Cardan from The Cruel Prince is the bad kind of unlikable character that is cruel for no reason, doesn't have any redeeming qualities, and is rewarded for his evil actions, whereas Evie, it's almost gonna say evil again because that is a nickname for her, but Evie is actually punished for her actions. The other characters constantly call her out on her bullshit. She loses friends, she loses relationships, she loses her own self-worth because she herself realizes that she's being an asshole right now, but she can't help it. She's very narcissistic and self-absorbed, but she also is aware of those things. And honestly, I just like her as a character. I think she's very well written, she's very multidimensional, as are all the other characters. In this book, I remember I did wish that we had more screen time on characters like Sam and even Jericho, because even though we know a little bit about their backgrounds, I wish we had gotten just a more screen time on them, their perspective on the current situations. Not even just like flashbacks, their story, more like what do they think about the situation right now. But other than that, I have very few to zero complaints. I really enjoyed this book and this series so far, and if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it because it's definitely worth it. I also just want to mention I love how historically accurate these books are to some extent. Like, they include a lot of political, societal issues that were current at the time, and kind of weave it into the magic and the fantasy of the story, and I love that because it really brings the world to life. It makes you feel like you're right there in the middle of it, and you even learn some things about, you know, the situation of like migrants and minorities in New York in the 1920s, and yeah, it's a great time. I love it, highly recommend it. And now that is it for my November wrap-up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and also let me know what you read in the month of November. What was your favorite book of the month? I mean, mine was definitely The Diviners. I was gonna say The Novembers. What is going on with my brain? The Diviners, I really enjoyed it. Let me know yours in the comments down below. And while you're down there, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope to see you back soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!